Christianity, along with all other related theologies, is an historical fraud. These religions now serve to detach the species from the natural world, and likewise each other. They support blind submission to authority. They reduce human responsibility to the effect that God controls everything, and in turn awful crimes can be justified in the name of a divine pursuit. And, most critically, it empowers the political establishment who have been using the myth to manipulate and control societies.
Now, Dr. Lawrence Buck, in Mystic Masonry, he also talks about Christianity's hidden traditions. He says, there was always an exoteric portion given out to the world, to the uninitiated, and an esoteric portion reserved for initiates, that was revealed only in degrees, accordingly as the candidate demonstrated his fitness to receive, conceal, and rightly use the knowledge so imparted. Few professed Christians are aware, perhaps, that such was the case with Christianity during the earliest centuries. And St. Gregory, that's the Bishop of Constantinople in 540 to 604 AD, said, you have heard as much of the mystery as we are allowed to speak openly in the ears of all. The rest will be communicated to you in private, and that you must retain within yourself. Our mysteries are not to be made known to strangers. One of the greatest personalities within the Jewish culture and tradition and religion is Rabbi Moses Maimonides, and he says, every time that you find in our books a tale, the reality of which seems impossible, a story that is repugnant to both reason and common sense, then be sure that the tale contains a profound allegory, veiling a deep, mysterious truth, and the greater the absurdity of the letter, the deeper the wisdom of spirit. Whoever shall find out the true sense of the book of Genesis ought to take care not to divulge it. If a person should discover the true meaning of it by himself or by the aid of another, then he ought to be silent. For if he speaks, he ought to speak of it only obscurely, in an enigmatical manner, as I do myself. So just know at this stage that if you're a well-meaning Christian who has been following this particular paradigm, understand that there is a hierarchy involved here, and that it's not an egalitarian process, this game of religion. You're being told only what you need to know. From their own words, from the horse's mouth, you have it, that there is an esoteric and an exoteric tradition here. And you may not be privy to that. You may not have earned that right. So be very careful then when you say that what you know here is the whole truth. Because those who are telling you to say that, and those who are giving you this information, they may know something more, something that you don't know. The Manichaeans, a 3rd century Christian sect, we have a statement from them. The Christ, or the Christ, is the glorious intelligence, which the Persians called Mithras. His residence is the sun. The word pastor, master, minister, ceremony, deacon, cardinal, sexton, the word nun and the word monk, or monsignor, monastery, all come from these ancient cults. We talk about a monastery. That's where monks and religious people will go. But what does the word monastery mean? Mon is moon and stir is the stars. The place of the meeting of the moon and the stars, a monastery. But you try going in there and going, hey, do you guys practice astrology? They're liable to sprinkle holy water on you. Tell you to get thee hence. What they don't tell you is that a deacon, which is a clerical duty, a deacon comes from the word decan, D-E-C-A-N, which is a division of the zodiac into 10 degrees. The decans, or the deacanates. They don't tell you that a sexton comes from the word sextant, which is a navigator's tool. To do what? Measure the stars. A minister is a moon and a star. Mr. Minister is literally saying the man of the moon and the stars. The Son of God, as the sun above us in the heavens. Jordan Maxwell, in Ancient Belief System, says, if one also replaces the word son, S-O-N, with the word sun, S-U-N, wherever the former is found in the Bible, it will be discovered that every single verse fits the literal son and not a man. In fact, the verses make better sense. That's right. Every time you see the word Son of God or the word Jesus, just in your mind, put there the word S-U-N and think of the Son. And suddenly the Bible will come alive. And every passage not only fits, but makes better sense than if it was a biography. And that is how the mythographers who've painted the image of Jesus are showing you. The rays of the sun, the red cross of the equinox, standing on the clouds, haloed with the sun and the cross of the zodiac, the light of the world. Behold, he cometh with clouds, says Revelation 1. Yes, the sun does come with clouds. The Christians to this day in the churches raise their arms, and the old symbol of the Ka. Open any book on Egyptian mythology and look, and you'll see the gods raising their arms, and that is known as the Ka, the Ka, when you raise your arms like that to symbolize the soul. But just on the most primitive level, just observe the artwork. Just look at the imagery that is being shown to you. The Christ haloed with light. Our Father who art in heaven. We end our prayers with Amen, which literally meant the Son God. The words of Jesus in Revelation 22, I am the root and offspring of David, and the bright and morning star. Jordan Maxwell has pointed out many times that many of the patriarchs also correspond to the sun. Solomon, the name of Solomon is actually made up of 3 phonemes, 3 syllables that mean the name of the sun in the 3 ancient languages of the world. Sol is the Anglo-Saxon for sun, Om is the Hindu, and On is the Egyptian. So Solomon is nothing but the sun. There's no biographical character. You're not going to find him, you're not going to dig him up. He doesn't exist. Sol Amon, like Jesus Christ, is the sun. And everything that you're reading about that Solomon is getting involved in is not a biography of a man, but a mythology of a sun. Same thing for Hercules and many of the other gods of the ancient world. Now the name that is given to Jesus Christ at his birth is Emmanuel, but that is the same thing. That comes from Omonael, Om, On, and El. They don't even hide it. The Renaissance artists drew on this canon. Above the cross of Jesus, you have the sun and the moon. Pagan motifs. Now the dramatis personae of the Old Testament are not biographical characters. Abraham, Jacob, Moses, Solomon, David, Samson, Joseph, Daniel, Jesus, and all the other patriarchs originally symbolized alignments and conjunctions between the planets and the luminaries. Their many wives, their sons and daughters simply represent degrees and minutes of zodiacal arc. So that's right. When we read about these patriarchs and their wives and their many sons and daughters, let us understand that this is another coding system. Everybody's running around trying to find how to break the code of the Bible, and yet these most important codes nobody pays the slightest attention to. These patriarchs, nobody's ever found any history of them, that they ever even existed. And we're not going to be able to decode this Bible until we understand how it works. So at this stage of our program, it is not outside the bounds of reason, after what we've been showing, that we have to understand that the Gospels are not a biography. The Bible was and is nothing more, nothing less than an astrotheological story, a sidereal myth. I believe that the writers of the Bible knew that. They had no intention of ever presenting it as anything else. And they would have been astounded that modern generations would actually think that it was a biography. Because if you were actually trying to create a biography, you would have done a much better job than the one that we have coming down to us. Even with all the machinations and throwing away and burning of other books, you still would have made it look more officially like a biography if that had been your intention. But the allegorists of the ancient world knew that everyone knows that this is a fable, a story. They would have not been able to even comprehend how this literally would have been taken so literally, and that the real, pure, beautiful, intriguing and mysterious meaning of it would just have been thrown out. Now the early church fathers prohibited astrology, and the Council of Toledo banned it forever. Nevertheless, 600 years later, the dates of the Pope's coronation were determined by the zodiac. The church hierarchy employed their own astrologers, and signs of the zodiac appeared all over the church furnishings, tiles, doorways, manuscripts, and baptismal fonts. But let us turn now to something more sane. What is the message and the myth and the man? We have this incredible story. What can really be gleaned from it? We've understood all its distortions. We've understood something about its origins. But can anything be gleaned from this? Or must the whole thing be cast aside? We've understood that the Bible is the story of the Son, S-U-N, and the Son of God, who personified it. For good or for bad, or both, the archetype and stereotype have long since become intimately fused. The greatest story ever told has empowered but also disempowered the populace, has enraptured but also perplexed the human mind. The story's ending is not especially happy, but it is not conspicuously sad either. It banishes futility just as easily as it can evoke it. We may question the historicity of Jesus, but we cannot question the relevance of the sun and its mythic and symbolic significance. It is not that Christ is the light, but that the light is the Christ. Horus and Set, Christ and Satan, are but the phenomena we call light and dark, expressing themselves physically and psychologically. It is the light that will be with us until the end of the world, and not a man. As we have seen, the Bible is a story about light, and not a man. It therefore constitutes a scientific as well as a religious epic. Now, Christians, for a variety of reasons we do not need to explore here, are likely to remain adamant in their belief in the physical Christ. And, as in the case of Robin Hood or Sherlock Holmes or Santa Claus, there is no reason why they should change their conviction and identification. The loss would be too great for any gain. And too many great truths have been based on this greatest of lies for it to be so roughly uprooted. Whether they realize it or not, the Christian is, even in his ignorance, closer to the ultimate truth than both the scientist, the cynic, or atheist. Because man is light, and light is man. The universe and the human are expressions of the same mystery. Man and world, or man and universe, are one thing, being viewed from two perspectives by the ego. The conviction of the Christian believer needs only to be widened to embrace truths which are equally as valid and enlightening to the heart and mind. The story of the man Christ ends at Calvary. A great man betrayed by a friend, arrested and dragged through the streets. He's mocked, he's cursed by society and condemned by the state. He is totally alone. The man who is so maligned receives our empathy. He doesn't have to be a god, he's a man, and he receives our empathy because he is us. His story exemplifies the life we all live. It is divine because it is so human. The scene at Calvary, the tragedy of a great man being hung between two thieves in front of his betrayers, is so inherently emotive and so patently human in tone that we often forget to understand how our emotional empathy occludes its greater existential meaning. The man whose life brings him to such a seemingly pathetic fate is not in pain at the end. He is neither regretful or alone. He is not suffering the needs no one and needs no one's help. He has arrived at this place because it is the inevitable end of the life he has hitherto been leading. So the mystery of this Christ is that if you want to live as an authentic man, if you want to live a moral way, if you want to be a mediator for the divine to the earth, you better realize you're going to have to deal with aloneness, loneliness, betrayal, and the rest of it. But the difference is the authentic man knows that ahead of time. The authentic man understands that the cup he will have to have put in front of him. But he's okay with it. He is not in lament. Our emotions should be, quite rightly, horrified by all of this. But he is walking the road that he is meant to walk. Now the ending is formidably tragic only for us, the witnesses, the spectators who, for a second, get to see an event which encapsulated the life and existential ardor of an authentic man. And I mean that in the full Germanic philosophical sense. It is we, not he, who balk at the futility and recoil at its insanity. He is present and is as accepting of his fate as were the Cathars of Montsegur, who walked on their own feet into the flames of the bonfires lit by their enemies, as those who rode with Crazy Horse on the plains of America. In that 1 minute of life before their death, such men were already living a deeper and greater life than most achieved during the long years allotted to them.